The idea that you can set up Red Eyes Dark Dragoon plus a Dark Burning Magic board wipe type of effect just off one card is honestly remarkable for Dark Magician, to say the least. This new Dark Magician support is truly revolutionary for the deck, and I haven't had this much fun playing and testing Dark Magician in a very long time. After extensive testing over the last few weeks, I've put more effort towards theory into this new support than I have in the current TCG, and I think I might have solved the future for Dark Magician. There are truly endless possibilities for Dark Magician following this new support, and in this video I want to showcase some of the unbelievable combos you can do with the new support that I think will pave the way for one of the many avenues this deck can take in the future. Diving straight into the first combo of the video, we'll be looking at the one card combo that Diabellstar the Black Witch can generate by herself. This one card, what it can facilitate for Dark Magician is truly remarkable, and the entire Azamina and Sinful Spoils engine, what it can do for Dark Magician and the synergy it has with the Dark Magician cards, and the synergy these two engines have with one another creates such an enjoyable gameplay experience that this is so far and away the most fun I've had playing Dark Magician. So this combo will start off by activating Diabellstar, sending a random card from our hand to the graveyard. Diabellstar will activate her effect, allowing us to set Deception of Sinful Spoils from our deck to our spell and trap card zone. We will activate Deception, but we will not use its effect just yet. Because we have activated a spell card, Diabellstar now meets the requirements that we are able to utilize Diabellstar to banish herself to summon Dark Magician of Destruction. We can go effect of Dark Magician of Destruction to search our Illusion of Chaos. We'll then activate Illusion of Chaos to search our Magician's Rod, and we will put a random card to the top of our deck. What we can do now is we can normal summon Magician's Rod, and Magician's Rod can search our Soul Servant. In this position, what we can do is we can actually go straight into Gaze of Timaeus. However, it's safe to assume that if our opponent did not hand trap us up until this point, it's safe to assume they don't have Ash or Imperm, so we can go a little bit greedier with searching Soul Servant. If you are scared of the Ash and Imperm, you can just go straight into Gaze of Timaeus. However, what Soul Servant allows us to do is just generate a little bit more card advantage at the end of the combo, which is really important for a deck like Dark Magician. What we can do now is we could utilize Deception by sending Illusion of Chaos from our hand to the graveyard, allowing us to search the Hallowed Azamina. In this position, we can utilize the Hallowed Azamina, sending Deception to the graveyard, allowing us to search our special summon Azamina Rusiliago. We can activate a Rusiliago's effect, allowing us to search our copy of Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils. Now what we have is a very interesting game state. We can utilize Magician's Rod and Rusiliago to get it off the board to summon Cross Sheep. Now in this position, there are various different lines you can go into. You can use the two bodies to go into a full Fiendsmith line. However, I feel with how tight the extra deck is, the Fiendsmith line isn't that mandatory for this specific list, and I think that the deck functions better if you're playing either the Fiendsmith line or the Azamina cards, but I don't think you should be playing them together if you are playing a heavier Dark Magician package. With Cross Sheep now on the field, Cross Sheep has a very interesting effect where we can generate another body on board. We'll activate the Hallowed Azamina, shuffling back Rusiliago back into our extra deck. Apologies for the pronunciation. To grab it back to our hand. Now we can reactivate the Hallowed Azamina because it's not a once per turn effect. We can chain the Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils to it, allowing us to get a search of Diabellstar the Black Witch to our hand, and then the Hallowed Azamina can now send Wanted. This is just to generate a little bit more value. What we can do now is we can special summon Sylvia from our extra deck using the Hallowed Azamina. And because Sylvia was now summoned under Cross Sheep can activate its effect, allowing us to summon our Magician's Rod. In this position, what we have now is, because we have 3 spells in grave, we can utilize a card like Selene. So we will link off Magician's Rod and Cross Sheep into our Selene. Now, in this position, Selene will revive our copy of Magician's Rod from our graveyard back to our side of the field, and this will be used as link material. Now keep in mind, once we've gone to this point, Sylvia prevents any sort of Nibiru activations, so we are safe to combo off freely if these other 2 cards are extenders. Once we get to this point, what we can do is we can utilize our Soul Servant draw by banishing our Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils to shuffle back Deception. So what we can do is we can activate Wanted in Grave, and then chaining our copy of Soul Servant. Soul Servant will stack our Gaze of Timaeus, Wanted will banish itself, and putting back Deception to the bottom of the deck. And because of this, we're able to draw a card, and then Soul Servant in Grave can banish itself to draw another card. So now that we have Gaze of Timaeus in our hand, we have a Dragoon on our opponent's turn ready to go. Now, the really interesting part of this entire combo is the idea of the board wipe. So what we will do is we will link off Magician's Rod and Selene to summon a card like Topologic Bomber Dragon. Now, what Topologic Bomber Dragon does is essentially if a monster is summoned into any of the zones it points to, it pretty much nukes every monster in the main monster zone. Now, why is this so important? We will set our Gaze of Timaeus and pass turn to our opponent. On our opponent's turn, what we have is a really unbelievable end board for this reason and this reason alone. On our opponent's relatively first action, we can utilize Sylvia to negate an effect by tributing it from the field to the graveyard. Now, when our opponent begins to start establishing a board state for themselves, what we can do is we can then activate Gaze of Timaeus. Now, why is this so good? Gaze of Timaeus will shuffle back our Dark Magician of Destruction, allowing us to summon Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. Now, notice that Red Eye's Dark Dragoon was now summoned under a zone that Topologic Bomber Dragon points to. And in doing so, Topologic Bomber Dragon now destroys every monster in the main monster zone. And the beautiful thing about this line of play is that Red Eye's Dark Dragoon cannot be destroyed by card effects, so it will be unaffected by this effect. So essentially what we have off this line of play is we have a Sylva negate, and then we have a board wipe off Topological Bomber Dragon with Red Eye's Dark Dragoon staying on the field, being protected from any sort of destruction effects that can be then utilized as an interruption. In this position, we pretty much have a free interruption that we pretty much drew into off Diabellstar. We could also utilize Diabellstar on our follow-up, which is really, really interesting. And the 3 random cards in hand could be any form of disruption, whether they're hand traps and or extenders to push this game state forward. And remember, this all started off one card, which is Diabellstar the Black Witch. So one card pretty much generated this kind of board. And more than anything, these are layered interactions, which is, I think, the direction that Yu-Gi-Oh! Wants to take going forward. Moving into the second combo, I do want to explore the potential of what happens when we open Diabellstar, plus any one of these 3, pretty much the entire Dark Magician monster lineup. If we open, for example, Rod and Diabellstar, the amount of advantage that these 2 cards can do is make the same end board we just experimented with, however, add another very interesting layer of disruption that I think is significantly overlooked. So for the purpose of this example, we'll start off with Magician's Rod rather than Illusion of Chaos or Magician's Souls, because throughout any point of this combo, Dark Magician of Destruction can search the other piece. So like I said in the previous combo, we'll activate our Diabellstar. Diabellstar will send a random card from our hand to the graveyard that's not Magician's Rod. Diabellstar will activate her effect, setting our Deception, and Deception will be activated without activating its effect. Now, much of this combo is very similar to the last one because it follows majority of the same steps. Dark Magician Destruction will search our missing piece. In this case, it was going to be Illusion of Chaos. Illusion of Chaos will search our Magician's Souls, putting a random card to the top of our deck. Essentially, doesn't matter which combination of these 3 cards we opened, Dark Magician Destruction, through this line of play, we will end with these 3 cards in our hand at this stage in the combo, no matter what. We will normal summon our Magician's Rod. Magician's Rod will search us our Soul Servant. Now that we have utilized Illusion of Chaos' search, Deception can activate its effect by sending it to the graveyard to search our Hallowed Azamina. Now, much like in the previous combo, this all follows the same steps. Hallowed Azamina will send Deception to summon Rusiliago. Rusiliago will activate its effect, searching our copy of Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils, and Magician's Rod will link off with Rusiliago into a Cross Sheep. What we can then do is activate Hallowed Azamina, shuffling back the Azamina fusion monster that we just summoned to add Hallowed Azamina back to our hand. Now, once we're in this position, we once again go Hallowed Azamina, chain Wanted to then search our Diabellstar. Hallowed Azamina will send the Wanted to summon our Sylvia. Now, what we do here is Cross Sheep will activate its effect, summoning our Dark Magician's Rod. Now, once we're in this position, Dark Magician of Destruction and Magician's Rod will link off into an IP Masquerena. We can then utilize Magician Souls. Magician Souls can send our Dark Magician Girl to the graveyard, special summoning itself. With Magician Souls now on board, we can link off Magician Souls and Cross Sheep to make our copy of Celine, and Celine will revive Magician Souls. Keep in mind that we haven't utilized Magician Souls send the spell and trap card send effect to draw more cards, because we want to essentially thin out our deck a little bit more to potentially dump any other cards that might be better suited in the graveyard. We can utilize our Wanted to shuffle to pretty much put to the bottom of the deck our copy of Deception, and like we did in the last test hand, Soul Servant will activate in response to this to stack Gaze of Timaeus. So Wanted will put back our Deception to draw one card, and Soul Servant stacks Gaze. Because now we have Dark Magician Girl and Dark Magician of Destruction, which identifies as Dark Magician in the graveyard, we can banish our Soul Servant to draw 2 more cards. If these cards are useless spell cards that we want to pretty much substitute for versions of hand traps, Magician Souls can be utilized to send these to the graveyard if we want. Then we can link off our Celine and our Magician Souls into Topologic Bomber Dragon. Now, why is this end board significantly better? Well, what we have is an SP interruption on top of everything already. What we have here is on our opponent's turn, after we set Gaze, we have the same number of cards in our hand, even utilizing the extender, which is really awesome. But essentially, Sylvia will be utilized as an interruption. And then if our opponent has multiple monsters or a threat in the graveyard, for example, if you're versing a Fiendsmith player that has a Lacrima on board with an engraver triggering engrave, what we can do is utilize Gaze of Timaeus. Gaze of Timaeus will shuffle back our copy of Dark Magician of Destruction, allowing us to summon a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon underneath Topologic Bomber Dragon. Now, why is this important? What we can do here is we can utilize Chainlink 1 Topologic Bomber Dragon to destroy all of the monsters in the main monster zone. However, IP Masquerena is on the field and can be utilized as an effect, so we can utilize IP Masquerena by activating its effect, linking off itself and Topologic Bomber Dragon to summon SP Little Knight. Now, SP Little Knight was not summoned in the main monster zone, which essentially protects it from any sort of destruction, and Red Eyes Dark Dragoon is also protected from its inherent protection. With SP Little Knight on the field right now, we can utilize its immediate banish, and it's another layer of disruption on top of an already on top of a board wipe. So like I said, Diabellstar by itself and any extender is not only follow up, but it's a banish, a Red Eyes Dark Dragoon negate, a board wipe, and a Sylvia negate. And that's all off Diabellstar and any combination of these pretty much Dark Magician starters. Another interesting line of play that I've come across significantly when testing was in a situation where we get the Topologic Bomber Dragon, and halfway through we have utilized Sylvia's negate. Now, in this hypothetical, we would need a way to access the second copy of Gaze of Timaeus. This can also be Secrets of Dark Magic. However, opening a second Gaze of Timaeus essentially allows this line to be significantly more streamlined. If this was Secrets of Dark Magic, we'd have to get pretty creative to get a copy of Dark Magician and or Dark Magician Girl to our hand. However, why this is so interesting is in this position, if we're still in our turn, we can activate Gaze of Timaeus, and Gaze of Timaeus can shuffle back our copy of Dark Magician of Destruction. And you can kind of see where this is going. Dark Magician of Destruction will fuse into our copy of the Dark Magicians, and because the Dark Magicians was summoned under a Topological Bomber Dragon's zone, it will be forced to be destroyed, and Dark Magicians will trigger, allowing us to summon Dark Magician Girl and Dark Magician. Now, if we haven't utilized Soul Servant already, which we don't really need to, we could keep Soul Servant engraved for this line. The Soul Servant pretty much turns into a draw 2 in this position, which is really interesting. And then on our opponent's turn, what we can do is we could have the second Gaze of Timaeus for our opponent's turn. We could activate Gaze of Timaeus, shuffling back our Dark Magician to summon our Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Now, why is this so important? We can then go on the back of Gaze of Timaeus. Red Eye's Dark Dragoon will summon under Topologic Bomber Dragon, which is a board wipe. However, we can still utilize the Dark Magician Girl on board because we can do something like Chainlink 1 Topological Bomber Dragon, Chainlink 2 Magician's Rod. Because we activated a spell card on our opponent's turn, Magician's Rod tributes our Dark Magician Girl to add itself back to hand for further follow-up, which is really amazing. And that's all on the back of like opening a second copy of Gaze of Timaeus when going through the Dia Belstar line. We still get our board wipe, but we generate even more follow-up. And with a card like Dark Magician Girl Engraved, now our Soul Servants are consistent draw 2s, and at that point you just snowball enough advantage that can carry you throughout the remainder of the game. So interactions like Topologic Bomber Dragon pretty much destroying our own copies of Dark Magician, of the Dark Magicians to generate value is also very, very effective. And something to keep in mind is that Topologic Bomber Dragon is not once per turn, so this destruction effect when a monster is summoned to the zone it points to can be done more than once to interrupt your opponent if you end up establishing a game state where you're able to do that. Cards like Eternal Soul come to mind if you do want to play a card like Eternal Soul being able to revive Dark Magician to a zone it points to. You can pretty much establish 2 board wipes on your opponent's turn. However, I don't feel like Eternal Soul is worth playing the brick for such a niche interaction, but it is something you can do, and all of this stems from the Dia Belstar engine. Pretty much the point of this video is to showcase all the different lines and avenues you can take to end on many different end boards depending on what your matchup offers. So in this specific combo, we need to open one of Illusion of Chaos, Magician's Rod, and or Timaeus with one of Dia Belstar or Wanted and any random monster discard. So for the purpose of this combo, we will use the worst case scenario where we open Wanted, Timaeus, and our Fuelos. So to start off this combo, we'll activate our Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils to search our Dia Belstar from our deck to our hand. Dia Belstar will send a random card from our hand to the graveyard to special summon herself, and she will activate her effect, allowing us to set our Deception from our deck to our Spell and Trap card zone. We will banish our Dia Belstar to special summon our copy of Dark Magician of Destruction, which will activate its effect to search us Illusion of Chaos. Illusion of Chaos will then be activated to search our copy of Magician's Rod, putting a random card to the top of the deck. Then what we can do is we can normal summon our Magician's Rod. Magician's Rod will search us our Soul Servant. And here essentially we have a million different avenues that we want to possibly take, but we will go straight into the Deception line. Deception will send our spare monster. It doesn't matter what this monster is. It could be a hand trap. As long as we keep these 3 cards in hand, we should be okay. So our Deception will search us our Hallowed Azamina, which we will then choose to activate, sending our Deception to the graveyard to special summon Rusilago. Once we're in this position, Rusilago will search us our second copy of Wanted of Sinful Spoils. Now, because we opened up Wanted, I'm saying that's the worst case because we no longer get a draw off this specific Wanted. We don't get a search off this Wanted. However, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. We'll link off Magician's Rod and our Azamina monster into our IP Masquerena. What we have now is we can utilize our Illusion of Chaos and our Timaeus to send Illusion of Chaos to the graveyard, special summoning our Timaeus the United Dragon. Timaeus will activate its effect, fusing itself and the Dark Magician of Destruction to summon our copy of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. Once we're in this position, we could utilize our Rusilago and our Hallowed Azamina Engraved to shuffle them, to essentially shuffle back our monster into our extra deck and bring back our Hallowed Azamina. Here, we'll activate Hallowed Azamina again, sending our Wanted to the graveyard to special summon our Sylvia. Apologies. Now, once we're in this position, what we can do is we have different avenues that we can take. However, we will be utilizing the Wanted Draw effect. We will banish our Wanted to shuffle back, to put to the bottom of the deck our Deception, and to that we will chain our Soul Servant. Soul Servant will stack us Gaze of Timaeus to the top of the deck, which we will then draw. Here, if we want another card in hand, we can just banish our Soul Servant to draw an additional blank, which is pretty good. Then what we can do is we can set our Gaze and pass turn to our opponent. Now on our opponent's turn, what we have is pretty interesting interactions. We will start off by utilizing our Sylva negate, for example. If we need to use it, we could utilize our Red Eye's Dark Dragoon negate, and in this situation, our IP Masquerena, after our Dragoon has been utilized as a negate, we could utilize IP Masquerena to link off with Red Eyes Dark Dragoon into a copy of SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight will then be utilized as a banish. However, also what we can do in this position is we can activate Gaze of Timaeus. Gaze of Timaeus will shuffle back our Dark Magician of Destruction to our extra deck, and we were going to be able to summon our Master of Chaos. Now, why is this so important? Master of Chaos will activate its effect, and pretty much we can dodge the Master of Chaos effect and chain block it to revive our Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So we can go like Master of Chaos Chainlink 1, and our second chainlink can be Magician's Rod. So Magician's Rod will tribute Master of Chaos to add itself back to our hand as an additional discard for Red Eyes Dark Dragoon when Master of Chaos summons it back. So off of two cards and a random monster discard, we essentially have two Red Eyes Dark Dragoon negates, as well as an SP Little Knight banish, a second SP Little Knight banish, and a Sylvia negate, which is really awesome, and it's really fun, and it just shows the amount of versatility these two engines have with tandem with one another when it comes to constructing an end board. As you watch the test stands in the background, I am at a crossroads with where I want to take these engines. The way they generate advantage and establish really strong end boards, the possibilities are truly endless. I'm definitely going to be working on new ideas for the deck, and I hope that these combos inspire you to try new things for Dark Magician support. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye.